My boyfriend's family called me a charity case at dinner and laughed about how they were using me for free childcare. I smiled and left without a word. 2 weeks later, they realized who I really was, and now can't stop calling. I still remember the exact moment everything shattered. The Hartwell family dining room with its pretentious chandelier, the expensive china plates that Mrs. Hartwell mentioned were family heirlooms 4 times that evening, and the hushed conversation I wasn't supposed to hear when I returned from the bathroom. Honestly, James, I don't understand what you see in her. Emily's voice carried from the kitchen. She's practically a charity case. A preschool teacher? In those Target clothes? I froze in the hallway, my hand gripping the ornate door frame. Mom thinks she's after your trust fund, Emily continued with a laugh. But hey, at least she's good with the kids. Free childcare is hard to find in this town. I expected James to defend me. After all, we'd been together for almost a year. Instead, I heard his familiar chuckle, the same warm sound I'd fallen in love with, now turned cold and unfamiliar. She's sweet, he said, and I could picture his casual shrug. And, yeah, the kids love her. My heart wasn't just breaking. It was being methodically dismantled, piece by piece, as I stood there in my $24.99 Target dress that I'd spent an hour choosing because I wanted to impress them. When I walked back into the dining room, everyone smiled like nothing had happened. Mrs. Hartwell poured more wine into crystal glasses while asking about my little daycare job, as she called it. Mr. Hartwell barely acknowledged my existence, too busy checking stock prices on his phone. Emily smirked over her glass, eyes flickering to my shoes, also Target, apparently a cardinal sin in the Hartwell household. I sat silently as they discussed their upcoming trip to the Hamptons, their country club memberships, and the investing opportunities that Mr. Hartwell was considering. Then Emily turned to me with a saccharine smile. So, are you free to watch the twins next weekend? Ryan and I have this charity gala, and our regular sitter is on vacation. I looked at James. He nodded encouragingly, like this was normal, like I should be grateful for the opportunity to serve them. That's when I stood up. Actually, I won't be available, I said softly. Emily's perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up. Oh? Something more important came up? The entire table went quiet, all eyes on me. I simply smiled, placed my napkin beside my barely touched salmon, and picked up my purse. Thank you for dinner, I said, then walked out without another word, leaving behind 4 stunned Hartwells and the relationship I thought was real. James caught up to me in the driveway. Babe, what's wrong? You're being dramatic. Those words, you're being dramatic. They were the final confirmation. I got in my car, turned the key, and drove away as he stood there confused and irritated like I was the problem. Updated. Okay, y'all, I've been reading your comments and I'm overwhelmed by the support. So many of you asked what happened with James after I left. I promise I'll get to that. But first, did anyone else have a moment when they realized their relationship was based on a complete misunderstanding of who they really were? 2. Prehistoria I context. 15% od obszczego objema. I met James at a local coffee shop 8 months before that disastrous dinner. I was grading papers, surrounded by sticky notes and half-empty coffee cups, when he asked if he could take the empty chair at my table. The place was packed, so I nodded without looking up. Teacher? He asked, gesturing to the stack of colorful worksheets. Preschool, I replied. Most guys usually lost interest right there, but James smiled. This genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. That must be rewarding, shaping young minds and all that. We talked for 2 hours. He told me he worked in business development, which I later learned meant he managed one division of his father's company. He was charming, attentive, and when he asked for my number, I gave it to him, despite my reservations. See, I had my reasons for keeping certain aspects of my life private. 2 years earlier, I'd inherited majority shares in Mindspan Technologies from my grandfather, making me the primary stakeholder in a $4.3 billion tech empire. But before that, I'd already chosen my path working with children. The inheritance didn't change my passion, it just complicated it. I had experienced firsthand what happened when people discovered my wealth. Suddenly, they wanted favors, connections, or worse, they treated me differently, like I was somehow less real as a person. So when I moved to Oak Ridge after college, I decided to live simply. I rented a modest apartment, drove a reliable but unremarkable Honda, and told no one about my other life where I quietly participated in quarterly board meetings via video call and signed off on major company decisions. James never asked about my family, never questioned why I sometimes had to reschedule dates due to work commitments that seemed odd for a preschool teacher. He was content with the version of me he thought he knew. As our relationship progressed, I met his family in pieces. First his parents at a stiff lunch where Mrs. Hartwell spent most of the time on her phone, then his sister Emily and her husband, Ryan at a barbecue where they barely acknowledged me until they learned I was good with kids and could keep their twins entertained. After that, the requests started. Would you mind watching the twins while we grab drinks? Could you help with their homework while we finish dinner? Small, innocent-seeming asks that gradually increased in frequency. I didn't mind. I love children, and the twins were sweet. Kids trapped in a family of status-obsessed adults. What bothered me was how James started taking it for granted. I told Emily you'd pick up the twins from school tomorrow, he'd say casually, not even phrasing it as a question. Or, Mom's having people over so we need to take the kids to the park for a couple hours. We became the default childcare option. And I noticed how Emily would mention her regular nanny, who was conveniently busy whenever they wanted a free evening. I noticed the subtle shift in how they treated me, like household staff rather than James's partner. James didn't see it. Or worse, didn't care. When I tried to bring it up, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "They're just comfortable with you. It's a good thing." The night of that fateful dinner, I'd actually been excited. James had texted saying his father wanted to discuss something important, and that I should dress nice. I'd thought maybe, finally, they were accepting me. Maybe Mr. Hartwell had a job opportunity for me at his company, or perhaps they were including me in family plans. I'd even splurged on a new dress from Target, not because I couldn't afford better, but because I genuinely liked shopping there, and because maintaining my cover meant consistency in every aspect of my life. Now, as I drove home from their house, tears blurring the streetlights, I realized how completely I had deluded myself. James hadn't fallen in love with me. He'd fallen in love with the idea of being the generous, open-minded boyfriend who dated beneath his station. I was his good deed, his way of proving he wasn't like other trust fund kids. I pulled into my apartment complex, parked, and sat in silence. My phone buzzed with text from James. What the hell was that? You're overreacting, call. Me, when you calm down, I turned off my phone and went inside. As I entered my apartment, I looked around at the place I'd carefully crafted to support my cover. IKEA furniture, secondhand books, nothing that would hint at my true financial status. For the first time, it felt like a cage I'd built for myself. Went to my bedroom closet and moved aside the hanging clothes, revealing a small safe embedded in the wall. Inside was a secure laptop, my connection to Mindspan Technologies and the life I kept separate from James and Oak Ridge. It was time to stop hiding. 3. Kulminacja. 35% od obszczego objema. The next morning, I called in sick to the preschool. Instead of my usual routine, I opened the secure laptop and logged into the Mindspan executive portal. There were 47 unread emails, including one from our acquisition team that caught my eye immediately. Update on potential Hartwell Solutions acquisition. My heart skipped. I'd known Mindspan was looking to expand into smaller regional markets, but I hadn't paid close attention to the list of acquisition targets. Now I clicked the email with shaking hands. The message contained a detailed analysis of Hartwell Solutions. Yes, the very company James's father owned. According to our team, it was a solid mid-size operation with good regional connections, but struggling with outdated technology and management practices. In other words, a perfect acquisition target for Mindspan. The timing was almost poetic. Spent the next hour reading every report, financial statement, and projection. Hartwell Solutions was worth considerably less than the Hartwell's lifestyle suggested. They were leveraged to the hilt, maintaining a facade of wealth while the company slowly sank. Mr. Hartwell had been seeking investors desperately, which explained why he wanted to talk to me at dinner, not to welcome me to the family, but probably to see if I had any connections or family money that could help. My phone had been buzzing all morning. I finally turned it on to find 12 missed calls from James and several texts escalating from irritation to concern. Are you seriously still mad? You're being childish. Hello? I'm getting worried. At least let me know you're okay, I texted back. A simple "I'm fine" and put the phone down, returning to my laptop. I had a decision to make. For the next 2 days, I ignored James's calls while working remotely with Mindspan's acquisition team. I fast-tracked the Hartwell Solutions review, sent the necessary documents, and scheduled an emergency board meeting. None of this was about revenge. Hartwell Solutions was genuinely a good fit for our expansion plans, but I won't deny feeling a certain satisfaction as I signed the confidential offer paperwork. On day 3, James showed up at my apartment, unannounced. "You can't just disappear on me," he said when I opened the door. He looked genuinely distressed. Designer clothes slightly rumpled, hair uncombed. "What is going on with you?" I let him in, struck by how different he looked in my apartment now. Before, he'd seemed charming when he joked about my cozy living space. Now I saw the condescension behind the comment. "I heard what you and your family said about me," I told him directly. He flinched, then recovered quickly. "You're upset about Emily's stupid comment? Come on, she was just joking." "Was it a joke when you agreed? When you all laugh about how I'm free childcare? When your mother calls me a charity case? James ran his hand through his hair. Look, my family can be judgmental. You know that. But they don't mean anything by it. They meant every word, James. And so did you. He sighed dramatically, playing the role of the reasonable one dealing with an emotional girlfriend. Okay, I get that you're hurt. I'll talk to them. They'll apologize. I don't want an apology. Then what do you want? He asked, exasperated. Looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I felt nothing. The hurt had burned away, leaving only clarity. I want you to leave. His expression morphed from confusion to anger. Are you breaking up with me over one bad dinner? No, James. I'm breaking up with you because you never really knew me and you never tried to. He laughed bitterly. What's that supposed to mean? I'm the only one who took a chance on you. Do you think anyone else in my circle would date a preschool teacher living in this? He gestured around my apartment. Place? There it was. The real James. Mask finally off. Get out, I said quietly. After he left, slamming the door behind him, I made a call to Mindspan's PR team. It was time to announce my role publicly for the first time since inheriting the company. The press release went out the next morning. Alexandra Reed, granddaughter of Mindspan founder Elliot Reed, to lead company's regional expansion as newly appointed Director of Strategic Acquisitions. First target, Hartwell Solutions. I included a professional photo of myself, not the casual shots James would recognize, but me in business attire from a corporate photo shoot done months earlier. James called within an hour of the announcement. I let it go to voicemail. Then Emily called. Then Mrs. Hartwell. Then Mr. Hartwell, 3 times in succession. I listened to Mr. Hartwell's voicemail with a sort of detached fascination. Alexandra, this is Richard Hartwell. I believe we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. I'd very much like to discuss this business opportunity with you directly, without intermediaries. Please call me at your earliest convenience. No mention of how they'd treated me, no acknowledgement of their behavior, just business. By afternoon, the story had been picked up by local business publications. By evening, it had reached the regional news. Tech heiress Live's double life as preschool teacher was my personal favorite headline. My phone continued to explode with messages, not just from the Hartwells, but from colleagues, acquaintances, even parents from the preschool. I turned it off again and poured myself a glass of wine, watching the sunset from my apartment window. Tomorrow would be complicated, but tonight, I allowed myself to feel the simple satisfaction of finally being seen. Updated. Your comments about James's entitled behavior are spot on. Many of you asked if I was planning the acquisition as revenge all along. Absolutely not. Mindspan had been eyeing Hartwell Solutions for months before I even knew it was on our list. Have you ever had a moment when fate lined up so perfectly that it almost seemed orchestrated, even though it was pure coincidence? 4. Posledstwia, 25% od obszczego obiema. The next week was a blur of meetings, emails, and carefully worded statements. I took a leave of absence from the preschool, the hardest part of this whole ordeal, honestly. I missed the kids, the finger paintings, the simple joy of helping a 4-year-old write their name for the first time. But I couldn't maintain the charade anymore, and I needed time to handle the Hartwell acquisition properly. Mindspan's office sent a car to pick me up for the first in-person meeting with Hartwell Solutions. I dressed professionally but not ostentatiously, a simple navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. This wasn't about flaunting wealth. It was about commanding respect. When I walked into the Hartwell Solutions conference room, the expressions were priceless. Mr. Hartwell stood frozen by the whiteboard. Mrs. Hartwell, who'd apparently decided to attend this important meeting, nearly dropped her designer handbag. And James, who shouldn't have even been there but had clearly pulled strings to attend, looked like he'd seen a ghost. Good morning, I said evenly, placing my portfolio on the table. Shall we begin? What followed was the most awkward business meeting of my life. Mr. Hartwell vacillated between desperate attempts to establish rapport. Alexandra, I've always admired self-made individuals, and thinly veiled panic as our team methodically outlined the acquisition terms. These terms were fair but not generous. Mindspan would absorb Hartwell Solutions, retain most staff but restructure management, and buy out the Hartwell family's ownership at market value, which was significantly less than they'd hoped. James kept trying to catch my eye across the table, but I focused exclusively on the business at hand. After the meeting, as everyone filed out, he finally cornered me. Lexi, he started, using the nickname I'd once loved. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him steadily. Would it have mattered? Would you have treated me differently if you'd known I was rich? Of course not, he said immediately, then caught himself. I mean, it's not about the money. But it is, I countered. Your family judged me for not having it. And now you're all panicking because I do. His expression hardened. So this is revenge? Buying my family's company because of some hurt feelings? This is business, James. Your family's company is a sound investment for Mindspan. The fact that it's your family's company is coincidental. He scoffed. Coincidental, right. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Look, I'm sorry about what happened at dinner. Emily was out of line, and I should have said something. But this is extreme. What's extreme is how quickly your perception of me changed. 1 minute I'm a charity case, the next I'm an heiress taking revenge. Maybe consider that neither is who I actually am. He didn't have an answer for that. Over the next few days, the Hartwells launched a full-court press. Emily sent a massive flower arrangement to my apartment with a card claiming she'd always respected my work with children. Mrs. Hartwell invited me to lunch at the country club where, I'm sure by coincidence, many of their social circle would see us together. Mr. Hartwell attempted to renegotiate acquisition terms directly, bypassing our legal team, and James alternated between apologetic texts, I miss the real you, and accusatory ones. You lied about everything too. I didn't respond to any of them. The twins' mother, Emily, showed up at the preschool during my lunch break, twins in tow, claiming they missed teacher Lexi. It was a low blow, using the children, but seeing the kids did remind me that they were innocent in all this. I spent 15 minutes catching up with them, carefully avoiding Emily's attempts to discuss the business situation. As the acquisition progressed, details about Hartwell Solutions' financial state became clearer. The company wasn't just struggling, it was nearly insolvent. Mr. Hartwell had been making increasingly risky investments to maintain their lavish lifestyle, leveraging company assets for personal loans. If Mindspan pulled out, they'd likely face bankruptcy within months. This put me in a difficult position, morally and professionally. The acquisition still made sense from a business perspective, but I needed to ensure it was structured fairly for the employees who'd done nothing wrong. 10 days after the initial meeting, James showed up at my apartment again. This time, he looked truly defeated. Dad's a mess, he said without preamble when I opened the door. The bank's threatening to call his personal loans if the acquisition falls through. I let him in, but maintained distance between us. That's not my responsibility. No. He sank onto my couch. The IKEA one he'd once called quaint. I know it's not, but there are 200 employees who'll lose their jobs if Mindspan walks away. We're not walking away, I said. The acquisition is proceeding as planned. Relief flooded his face. Really? So you'll help? I'm not doing it for your family, James. I'm doing it because it's the right business decision. He nodded slowly. I understand, and I'm sorry. Not just about dinner, but everything. How I saw you. How I let my family treat you. I was so caught up in how things looked that I never really saw who you were. For a moment, I felt a flicker of what had drawn me to him initially. Then I remembered Emily's voice. Charity case. I appreciate the apology, I said carefully, but it doesn't change anything between us. He looked down at his hands. I figured. After a moment, he asked, Was any of it real? Us, I mean? I was real, I told him. You just never saw me. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment thinking about identity, perception, and how rarely people see beyond the surface. James had only seen preschool teacher Lexi or wealthy Alexandra, never the complete person who was both and neither. By the end of the second week, the acquisition was finalized. Mindspan would retain most of Hartwell Solutions' employees, invest in modernizing their technology, and expand their market reach. The Hartwell family would receive fair market value for their shares, enough to pay off their debts, but not enough to maintain their previous lifestyle. It was a professional resolution to a messy personal situation. 5. Razwiazka I epilogue, 10% od obszczego objema. 6 months later, I stood on a stage in downtown Oak Ridge, accepting an award for the Mindspan Children's Initiative, a new foundation I'd established to improve early childhood education in underserved communities. We'd already funded technology upgrades for 5 local preschools, including the one where I still volunteered 1 day a week. As I looked out at the audience, I spotted the Hartwells in the back row. They hadn't been invited, but it was a public event. Mr. Hartwell now worked as a consultant for one of Mindspan's subsidiaries, not the leadership role he'd once had, but a position that utilized his experience. Mrs. Hartwell had scaled back her social appearances considerably. Emily had, surprisingly, started volunteering at a children's hospital, perhaps finding genuine fulfillment in working with kids rather than just using them as social currency. And James had moved to Chicago for a fresh start. According to mutual acquaintances, he was working for a startup and dating someone new. I hoped genuinely that he'd learned something from our relationship. After the ceremony, Emily approached me hesitantly. Congratulations, she said, gesturing to my award. What you're doing for those schools is amazing. Thank you, I replied, neither warm nor cold. She shifted uncomfortably. The twins ask about you sometimes. They miss your stories. They're welcome to attend the reading program at the library. I volunteer there on Thursdays. She nodded, understanding the boundary I was setting. I'd like that. And I'm sorry for everything. I studied her face and saw something I hadn't expected. Genuine regret. I hope you mean that, Emily. I do. She glanced back at her parents, who were hovering awkwardly by the exit. We all do. As they left, I felt no triumph, no vindication, just a quiet acknowledgement that growth was possible, even from the most unexpected sources. That night, as I walked through my new home, not extravagant but no longer hiding who I was, I thought about the lessons of the past 6 months. I'd spent years concealing my wealth, afraid it would change how people saw me. In the end, it wasn't my money. That had revealed character, but its absence. My phone buzzed with a text from Kim, one of the preschool teachers. The kids miss you. When are you coming back for another storytelling day? I smiled and replied, tomorrow. I'll bring the puppet dragon they love. Some parts of my life had changed dramatically, but the core, my love for education, for helping children find their voice, remained constant. That was the real me, neither defined by wealth nor limited by its absence. The Hartwells had lost a charity case and found a businesswoman they couldn't manipulate. But I had found something more valuable, the freedom to be fully myself, without apology or pretense, and that was worth more than any inheritance. Updated. Thank you all for following my journey. Many have asked if I ever considered taking James back after his apology. The truth is, once trust is broken, that fundamentally, can it ever really be repaired? I've learned that people who only value you conditionally aren't worth holding on to, regardless of their apologies. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who couldn't see your true worth until it was too late?